And welcome everyone. We'll call this meeting to order. Welcome members of council here tonight and also our staff who are here to provide advice and information to us so we make the best decisions for South Huron residents. And I ask everyone who's here if they could please make sure their cell phones are turned off or muted. And welcome those that are attending from home. And a reminder to those that are participating from home is that there's a link on the budget page. You'll find the documents there on our online agenda. So please feel free to review that if you wish. And I'll turn to Ms. Masuda-Collison for item 2, please.
That South Huron Council approves the agenda as presented.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and the general nature thereof from members of council. Mr. Neeb, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor Finch. Item 4.4.1, South Huron Arts Center. The general nature being that I'm a chair of a partner organization with the South Huron Arts Center. So when that item comes up, I will step out of the meeting.
Thank you. And any other persons with a conflict at this time? Okay, not seeing you. Thank you very much. We move on to item number 4.1. Ms. Masuda-Collison, please.
At the October 23rd meeting, Council reviewed the operating budget and asked staff to bring back more information. Council asked for a further breakdown of the information on the wages and benefits line on the budget impacts and priorities page, and further clarification on the proposed recreation and cultural services programs budget revenues. Council also asked about the calculations for investment income within the general government corporate services investment income line. Staff have provided Council a memo on the agenda that provides Council a further breakdown of the wages and benefits line. And General Manager Becker will provide an explanation of the changes to the proposed programming budget revenues. And Director Warwick will provide the following follow-up on the calculations for the investment income.
Thank you. Any questions for the CEO? Okay, and I see Mr. Oak. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wondered if Rebecca could go through her memo on wages and benefits so that we'd have a further clarification on that. Any of the highlights?
Any of the highlights? Okay, the base wages, the number includes step increases in 2024, and each compensation grade level has 6 steps, and not all employees will receive the step increases. The municipality's base wage expenses for 2024 are increasing by 3%. Now, the cost of living adjustment in the briefing, the annual statistics CPI for September 2023 was 3.6%. And as just a bit of a background, each year the entire compensation grid may move up by a specific percentage subject to council approval of the annual operating budget. Pay increases due to an annual compensation grid adjustment is not automatic each year. Approval depends on council approval of the annual operating budget. As far as the benefits line, there were some changes that had to do with benefit increases overall with our provider, and some of the information there with the dental association fee that's outlined there in the memo as well. And as far as pension, in the briefing, the expenses were increased by 5%. And the overall expense was impacted due to, as of January 1st, non-full-time employees do have the option to join into OMERS as well. And on the last page there, under the financial impacts, there's actual chart there that provides the dollar change year over year, as well as the percentage change year over year.
Thank you. Any other further questions? Councillor Dietrich, and then back to Councillor Oak.
Does anybody know, thank you, Mr. Mayor, how many employees we do have?
Ms. Masuda-Collison?
We have 49 full-time, but it does vary between part-time. We have firefighters as well. I think offhand, I believe it's around 111, but I would need to confirm that actual date. It depends on what time of year.
Thank you. Councillor Oak, do you still have something? And then we'll go to Councillor Neeb.
Yeah, thank you. So in these numbers that we've seen in the budget impact and priorities page, they're reflecting a 6.6% increase between wages and COLA. Is that how I'm reading that?
Yeah, there's 3% for wages.
Yes.
Yeah, and then 3.6 for COLA. Yes.
Thank
So
you.
just wanted to clarify that, so.
Okay, Councillor Neeb, go ahead, please.
Have there been any FTE increases in the last year?
Not in the last year. We actually do have some vacant positions at this point that one of them hopefully will get filled quite soon. Thanks.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Vaughn, please go ahead.
Yeah, it's more of a comment. And it's not necessarily one that everybody's gonna like to hear, but I have to say it. Whether it's 6.6 for base wage and COLA, or if you look at the whole increase for all of the different factors, it's a 7.35% increase. And it just seems to me that that's a bit on the excessive side, considering where we are with everybody's wallets being stretched to the limit in all of Ontario, all of Canada. So when I think of some people have got a base wage increase, and then on top of that, they're getting a COLA. And I don't know all the detail behind how the base wage increases were calculated and how much of a COLA is sort of embedded in some of that thinking to bring it to market wages. But I'm wondering if we shouldn't be looking at this a little harder in terms of, is this really the way we should be going this year? Should we be giving a full COLA to people who've already had their base wages increased by 3% or perhaps more? I know the 3% is actually probably an average of all of staff in terms of the base wage. So I'm asking if the CAO can put some reflection behind this. I'm not sure that we should be looking at that kind of an increase.
Ms. Masuda-Carlson, comment?
I would comment that it is cost of living is at the discretion of council as to whatever amount that would be, if any, is considered. The 3% was what was outlined in the pay compensation that was passed earlier this year. So that's where the base wages come from. And it is market value as far as that goes. As far as the cost of living increase, staff can perhaps do some research and bring back and see what other municipalities are doing if council wants kind of a benchmark on that. I would note that we are a little bit earlier than some municipalities to get this far in our budget, but it is certainly something we can look at.
Councillor Neeb, go ahead, please.
I guess just one other perspective to have on it too is that as directors of a corporation, we need to ensure that we're retaining the employees that we do have. And I think compensating them properly and going through the compensation review revealed that we weren't compensating our employees fairly compared to other municipalities. I also think as an employer too, we need to weigh out, the talents that our staff do have, and that's why we have a grid in order to retain the talent and the institutional knowledge that's within the municipality. Another aspect too to think about is we have our treasury staff who just won 2 awards in the top 15 of the province. We also have staff that have been working tirelessly on 2 rec centers, which is on top of their current workload. And we also have multiple developments that are on the go. So I look at the growth that we've seen and the benefits to our community that these people have put in. And I'm weighing out in my head, is it worth compensating them properly and accurately compared to the cost of living? I think so. Now, I think there's also something to be said about reflecting on the costs to taxpayers, But I think before we cut back on that, we should maybe even look at our own pay as counselors and our own expenses as counselors before we start docking our staff, considering the talent that we have. So just a thought.
Thank you, Councillor Neeb. Any other comments? Councillor Oak, go ahead, please.
Yeah, thank you. Just a question. Last year, it was early days when we were doing budget. I don't think any of the compensation review kicked into the 2023 budget. Was there any, and then what was the COLA number that we used last year in the 2023 budget?
I don't believe there was any COLA attached to the last year's budget because of the pay compensation that was coming this year. Can you confirm that, Julia?
Ms. Warwick?
Do you, Mayor Finch? Yes, that's correct. There was no COLA due to the timing of the pay compensation grid.
Councillor Oak?
So I'm just thinking out loud here, and in light of potential inflation dropping, that we're starting to see some dropping. October was 3.1. You know, that we're on a bit of a, who knows how far it's going to go if it even gets below 3. I don't know in the next year the way things keep going, but I'm just wondering if this is something that we should look at, since we didn't have COLA last year and we were expecting the grid movements and the compensation, and there's a sizable amount again this year in the 3% amount. Just wondering about maybe phasing in the COLA to get back. I know for years we were using COLA in September as a guide sort of thing, but it's sort of been skewed with this compensation review that was done at the same time. So just wondering if that's something, if we're reviewing it, what to look at, maybe a partial COLA this year versus going right with 3.6. So
Ms. Basu-Collison, comment?
I can add to that. Some municipalities do have a COLA policy, a cost of living policy. I also do have some of the previous 5-year numbers. So 2019, it was 2.2%. 2020, it was 1.9%. 2021, it was 0.5%. 2022, it was 4.4%. And in 2023, it was 0%.
Thank you. Any other comments? Deputy?
Thank you. And when you look at the benefits and the pension and like some of that's out of our control, we don't have a choice of that. So, I mean, that brings it up quite a bit too. And I guess when we go back to the COLA, we maybe want to look at somewhere's in between the middle, like 2 to 2.5. I don't know. That's my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor McLeod-Haggett.
I kind of agree with what Deputy Mayor is saying. We have to look at the overall number that's going to be increasing here. Yes, there is the base wage, there is the COLA, but they're also getting the added benefits of the pension, their own personal benefits, where we have to look outside as well as to what other people's wallets are showing, that that increase that's coming back from them to us, where some of them are struggling. So I get that the talent we have is amazing and we need to keep it, but I think 7% is very high.
Ms. Basu-Collison, comment?
And just to clarify, not everybody would get that percentage. If they were at the top of the grid, they would not get that. It would only be the COLA. Now, perhaps the director could provide some information for council as to the impact of 2 and 2.5%. That's, I think, what council had kind of thrown out there. Could you do that, Julia?
Ms. Warwick?
Through you, Mayor Finch. I might first just clarify a portion of the memo too, just for the understanding, based on the timing of when last year's budget was passed and the compensation grid was passed. A portion of this change in base wage budget figures is just to bring it up to what our staff are being paid in 2023 as is, so that's just something to consider too. In terms of the COLA, I did calculate, if we used a 3% instead of the 3.6%, it would result in just over $31,000 in savings overall. If we used a 2% COLA, it would result in nearly $83,500. And that's for the corporation as a whole, not just levy fund.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Vaughn, go ahead, please.
I'm just wondering, Julia, if you could just read those numbers back again. You COLA at 2%, you said 83,000?
Yeah, so approximately 83,600. And then 3% would be approximately 31,000.
Councillor Oak.
And so that's total, but that's not all to levy. What percentage would be levy on those numbers?
Through your Mayor Finch, I would need to run it through all of our budgeting software to figure out the levy only impact. I did calculate at 2%. If you just give me 1 second here. So if we use 2% COLA, then it would be levy savings of just shy of $63,000. And user fee savings of just shy of 21,000.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, Councillor Oak.
Oh, my mic's on. Sorry. Thanks, Mayor. Just so next steps would be for staff to come back with these numbers or what is council's wishes on this?
Any members-
Just
any-
no,
any
I
members
want
of
to
council?
finish off on this section before we start the other session.
Councillor Vaughn, comment?
I would like to have some benchmarking actually of what else is happening out there. And I know it's early days and that there's a lot of budgeting still to go on, and I'll see a lot of things in the paper in terms of different unions and so forth asking for certain wages that are quite high to start, and maybe that's not how they end up. But I would just like to feel good about justifying what we have. So some of the additional information that was given in terms of the different COLAs that have been over the last 5 or 6 years was very helpful in terms of knowing at different rates what we might be able to save in absolute dollars and on the levy and then on the user fees as well. And so I think if we also knew what kind of is happening out there in the outside environment, I think that would help council a lot in terms of deciding how we might take this going forward.
Councillor Oak.
I agree. The only other suggestion I would have is it would be nice to know how many have maxed out their grid and they're not eligible, for that aren't part of the 3% increase. And I know that number is because of the phase in this past year, and not everybody's going to benefit from another 3%. That's just what's occurred this past year. If I'm understanding it right, that the 3% occurred in 2023 for the most part, and it's not another 3%. We're just catching things up, or maybe I'm missing that part.
Ms. Warwick, can you comment?
Through you, Mayor Finch. So a portion of it is related to that, and a portion of it is related to employees who are scheduled to get grid increases in 2024.
Thank you. Councillor Neeb, you had something?
I'm just thinking in terms of us as a council looking at this, I think we also should be looking at our own pay. I'm wondering if we can get numbers back to about what a 3.6% pay cut would look like for council, just considering I think as leaders, we need to match what we say. And I think that's important for the public to see as well. I think it's important that we show solidarity if we're going to look at cutting our COLA increase for our staff. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Councillor Oak, sorry.
Yeah, I'm agree, you know, whatever in the past, whatever the staff has, whatever we've agreed to the staff is usually the same, or it is the same for council sort of thing. So I agree.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, not seeing any. Ms. Masula Carlson.
The next thing on the agenda, I think, was the changes in the recreation programming.
Okay, thank you. Chief Becker. Any questions for the chief? Chief, you have something for us? Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Finch, there were some questions at the last meeting on the revenues on the programming line. And so what that was a base number that we used, same number as 2023. We were anticipating the fees and charges study information to provide us a little bit more information. That's why we had left that there. It is historically been the programming that was offered was the playground, karate, pickleball, and the carpet bowling were the primary users. Since the last couple of years, the programming piece has only been pickleball and carpet bowling. The playground and karate numbers, playground we don't offer at this time. There was no direction from council to start that up again, but it is offered by other private groups. We were not wanting to compete against those private groups so that, you know, you're taking away from them. Plus, if we had those programs, we would need an increase in staff. So right now, those were seasonal staff that were hired for those programs. Karate is a contracted service that we have two parties that run karate programs in the school locations, and there would be some implications on the budget numbers if we did change, took those revenues away. So it's something that we can. We are waiting for that fees and charges study review to be complete. We know that we do need to make some changes going forward, but at this point, that's why that was left the way it was. It was a match from 2023.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Wark, yeah, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Finch, I'll just expand on what Jeremy has said. The revised budget impacts and priorities sheet that you'll see reflects the changes that we've made to the program's budget. So we've removed the revenues associated with the playground and gymnastics programs, and then also removed, it's within the wages and benefits line, some part-time and seasonal allocations that we had to run those programs.
Good, thank you very much. Any questions from members of council? Councillor McLeod Haggett.
Will there be further discussions on what programming we can bring back to the rec centers to use them, especially now that we've done the upgrades to the Huron Park arena where it can be used year round? I'm just thinking logistics. There's a huge cry for childcare. So in the summertime, even with programs that are offered, there's still lack of resources out there for parents for parks and rec programs for their kids. And I know seniors have been reaching out to me wanting to know what programs are coming back possibly.
Chief Becker, comment?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Finch. We can always look at more programming. That's definitely an option. If we choose to use the Stephen Arena for anything other than ice uses, it will require significant upgrades on top of what's been done for the occupancy change. So that's something maybe the gentleman to my right can explain further, but because it is an occupancy change, it would require a sprinkler system. So that's something that we can look at, but always open to options on other programming. We do have lots of other facilities that we can use too, and happy to talk about those.
Great, thanks, Chief. Any other questions? Mr. Rolfe, did you want to comment at all? No, it's up to you. Sure, no, that's fine. No, that's fine. Any questions for either Mr. Rolfe or Mr. Becker? Councillor Vaughn, go ahead.
Yeah, I think my counselor here brings up a very good point. When we were talking about Stephen and making it a year-round venue, we did talk around the council quite a bit about how we would be able to bring in more revenue, or we had a potential. So news that we maybe have an occupancy issue that might result in more money and expenditures and so on. Similarly, when we went through the South Huron Rec Center, we were also talking about revenues and the revenue model for hockey and ice groups and sponsorships potentially. And so it all brings back to mind that we really don't have a sort of committee or a project or a drive to look at how do we expand our revenue capabilities as a municipality through programming or through extra marketing of our premises programs and so on. So we don't really have anything like that in this budget, but I'm wondering if we can ask the CAO to sort of earmark that for an upcoming meeting that maybe we need to start thinking about. Do we need a committee to get together that's a mix of councillors and staff to start talking about those ideas? Maybe it won't work for this year, but maybe we can be ready for next year's budget.
Mr. Carlson, comment?
User fee generation, revenue generation study should be, I believe, the first or second quarter of next year. As part of that too, there was a sponsorship part of that. So once we have all that information, it might be a good time. Also, we are going to be doing quite a lot of consulting with the public next year through our official plan and different things like that. It might be a good time to capture what people are looking for, what some of the programs would be useful for the community, you know?
Okay, Councillor McLeod Haggett and then Councillor Oak.
So just looking at our neighboring municipality in Lucan, I've got a lot of messages sent to me on how they're getting feedback from their community. They've got a huge thing set up in their rec center. There's a Survey Monkey going on. People can go in and just put Post-it notes on their boards of different activities and programming that they're looking for in their community. Currently, I know there's limited programming to bring any new people to our community. We've been struggling to find lawyers to come to our community. They come, they look, and there's like limited offering. Haskell's Funeral Home, I've talked to them. They're struggling to keep funeral directors here once they're done their internship because there's lack of programming here. So I think we need to look at what we can offer back to the community to bring people and keep people here.
Councillor Oak.
Yes, thanks. And I think we need this report, the study that's coming, so that we can have a real discussion as far as future, because any of the programming that we have, they're not money makers. It's how much do we want to subsidize it, because there's nothing in recreation that is paying for itself. So it'll be a matter of how much are we prepared to subsidize something or compete with outside parties that are already offering some of the programs. So I totally agree with the discussion. I do know United Way is having an event next week, and one of the topics is talking about opportunities for youth recreation. So that's one of the 4 categories that they're talking about. So I'm interested to see what's going to come out of, some recommendations or, community feedback on that side of things. But there's some things that are being offered by the private sector that we have to be careful that we don't step on their toes as well. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. That's not our role. Our role is to offer the facilities, offer opportunities for outside parties if they want to use our facilities to run a program and not necessarily our staff to do it. So it's something that we all need to, because yes, we want to attract people here and we want to have events and different opportunities for all ages to utilize these facilities. So look forward to the fee study that's coming and user study that's coming and to tie in to further discussions as a council. I agree. I think it's not going to happen for this budget year, but I think for the next budget year, we'll have some great dialogue to take into.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you. Chief, do you have anything else? No, thank you. Ms. Carlson, please.
Then I'll just turn it over to Julia.
Go ahead, Ms. Warwick. Looking forward to it.
Through you, Mayor Finch. So I'll just start going over the budget impacts and priorities that's included in tonight's budget. I've highlighted in green anything that's changed since the prior meeting. So the wages and benefits line has changed, which we've already touched upon. The investment income based on conversations at last budget meeting and balancing out a conservative approach with the knowledge that interest rates have significantly changed in recent years. I have amended the estimates to be based on a 3-year average as well as updating the projections. So that's resulted in approximately $110,000 additional revenue anticipated for 2024. Another change is that we received the budgets from both the conservation authorities, resulting in an additional cost of just over $11,000. We received our OMPF allocation, which was $14,500 higher than our 2023 allocation. As already touched upon, we removed the revenues related to the programs that have been discontinued. And then there was an update to fund our sponsorship of Drayton Entertainment via the amenity fee reserve. So that's been incorporated, that bottom line of $25,000 coming off of the levy. Further down in the baseline capital, there was a minor change to a quote received related to the Victoria Street reconstruction project. So that's what's changed in the baseline capital figure. The final net levy impact for the tax rate calculation, this results in $598,496. And then this total levy impact is reflected in the gray boxes down below. So with this, with these levy changes, an annual increase on $100,000 residential assessment would be $39.17 for wards 1 and 3, $30.24 for ward 2. So this would be a tax rate increase of 6.5% for wards 1 and 3 and 4.29% for ward 2.
Thank you. Any questions? Councilor Oak.
Thank you, and thanks for updating that, Julia. I appreciate that. One question I have, and when I was reviewing the reserves that we had, and one of the reserves that we have is the OPP contract stabilization reserve, and there's 300,000 in that. Just wondering what that reserve is for, and whether we could use some of that reserve to go towards the OPP contract that we have. In the last few years, the OPP contract fluctuates slightly from year to year, up or down. This year's down, but I'm thinking that 300,000 is a pretty healthy reserve to have for that contract, and just wondering if we could utilize some of that or what that is for.
Ms. Warwick.
Through you, Mayor Finch. So our reserve policy states that this OPP contract stabilization reserve is to provide funding to minimize the impact of contract renewal costs, and it's established from a previous year credit. The recommended minimum level of funding is 1% of the general levy. So our reserve balance was approximately 303,000 as of December 2022. So that is a healthy balance. It could be used towards the OPP contract costs. I would state that this year, the impact of the OPP contract is actually a positive impact on our levy. As opposed to, I would assume the intent of this was to minimize the impact of a negative impact on the levy.
Thank you, Mr. Rook.
So, yes, thank you. And that's, yes, it's a negative 84,000 this year. I guess in your comments, you talked about 1% of leaving a reserve in there of 1% of the, so that would be maybe 200,000 then in a reserve potentially to because our contract is around $2 million, I believe. And so I'm just wondering if that's a possibility, if it says 1%, could we knock 100,000 out of that reserve and put it towards a contract? And still meet our 1% that was sort of as a guideline.
Ms. Warwick, comment?
Through you, Mayor Finch. Yes, it would still remain a healthy balance per our reserve policy if you were to take out $100,000. I will say our reserve policy is likely due for an update, just to further validify the minimum recommendations that we have in that policy. So I would just keep that in mind as we're discussing pulling from the reserves. But
Great, thank you, Mr. Oak.
So just a question. Are we going to see big swings in the OPP contract? I guess I don't know, you know, down the road with these changes that are coming up. I just wondered, I still think 200,000 or to leave 200,000 in there is a fair number. I don't think we're going to see that kind of swing from year to year, but I don't know that. But in a year where we're looking at 6.5% or 4% or whatever the number is, we're looking at various things that we could maybe utilize to keep things reasonable. Maybe it's 50,000 out of there, not 100,000. But I'm just thinking that 300,000 sounds like a pretty healthy reserve to have into something that that hasn't, since my time on council, has not swung that much from year to year. Like this is probably one of the biggest swings that I've seen in a long time, and it's actually down 84,000. So in other years, I forget how much it's swung, but it hasn't been anywhere near this number, I believe. So just the thought that it might be something that council might consider utilizing some of the reserve to offset the police contract.
Thank you, Mr. Oak. Ms. Carlson, any comment?
I would comment that there are going to be changes. We're not sure what those are yet and what they will impact. And the other thing is that it's an operational cost for the OPP. It'll be coming every year. It won't be any different next year. So it's a matter of whether or not that reserve would be more useful this year or to keep it in reserve, right?
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing Councillor Vaughn, go ahead.
Yeah, just wanting a clarification here. Julia, you mentioned that the reserve was at 2022 was 303,000. So with the reserve policy, if we stick to the reserve policy as it is, what will that look like at the end of 2023? Like, are we putting more money into that reserve beyond where it was at 2022?
through you, Mayor Finch. No, we don't budget to put any additional funds into that reserve in any given year. So it will likely remain at that same balance for the end of 2023 as well.
Follow up, thank you. And so it's been at this 303 for a number of years, is what you're basically saying, or?
I believe so. I would need to pull the schedules to say for sure, but I believe it's been at that level for a while.
Okay. So in terms of fairly static, we haven't really been leaning on it. I would be inclined to want to take a look at maybe taking some part of funds out of this reserve, or if there are any other reserves that are sitting there that aren't actually anticipated to be used for the purposes of looking at bringing the levy down.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? The stroke?
Just a question. So the reserve that's there, the 303, and if it's been static, and that's, there will be interest that it accrues, each year, as part of because that money's, basically sitting in an investment or a bank account or something like that. There'd be some interest that it would be getting each year.
Ms. Warwick?
Through your Mayor Finch. So for the reserves, we don't allocate interest to each individual reserve. We do for reserve funds, but not a reserve, which the OPP contract stabilization reserve is just a reserve. So it's not allocated its own interest.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from members of council? Ms. Councillor Vaughn, go ahead, please.
Not on that, but can I move to a different topic? Okay, thank you. Okay, the investment income. Note that you've moved it from, instead of a 4-year average to a 3-year average, which has given us, I think, around not quite 100,000. Wait a minute. 173, but $75,000 extra.
On the levy, yes.
Yes, okay. So on the levy, right, because we have the user fees that also are getting some. And so I was kind of thinking about this in terms of we already know that for 2023 we ended up receiving much more in the year of 2023 than we had anticipated in the budget for 2023. And sort of the indicators that I'm reading about in the news and so forth for next year, there might be a leveling off of interest rates and maybe a minor drop, but it's looking as though those who predict such things are saying that everything's going to look pretty much the same for the next 6 months. And so I would share your view that it's conservative, but I would also like to think in terms of the money that we earned that we were not expecting in 2023. Has that actually gone into the working capital reserves, that extra windfall, if you will?
Ms. Warwick?
Through your Mayor Finch. At this point in time, no, it will be at the end of the year when all operating figures are final. It would be incorporated into the overall surplus or deficit for the levy fund. And then at that point, that overall surplus or deficit flows through the working fund reserve. So at this point in time, I would say the investment income line is by far the furthest variance line in the operating budget, which would indicate we will likely have a surplus for 2023. And then that surplus would go into the working fund reserve at year end. It's not currently sitting there, though.
Okay, and so at this point, okay, so whether we look at it from a 2023 perspective or a 2024 perspective, I'm suggesting maybe we not be quite so conservative considering where the interest rates have been in the past year, going to be in the next year, or we're anticipating in the next year, and that maybe instead of a 3-year, can we look at a 2-year average?
Ms. Masulo-Carlson, your comment?
Another option could be looking at the working fund itself. And maybe that's something that Julia could maybe provide a little bit more information on.
Ms. Warwick?
Through your Mayor Finch. So our working fund reserve is another one that, according to our reserve policy, has a fairly healthy balance. So and there's nothing very specific that fund needs to be used for. So the reserve fund policy provides that the working fund reserve is to provide funding to offset extraordinary and unforeseen expenditure requirements, one-time expenditures and shortfalls, and to minimize fluctuations on the general tax levy and to manage cash flows. So that really is an option if council is looking for an additional
pot of money to pull from, I suppose. That is always an option at council's discretion.
And Ms. Masula Colson, go ahead.
And one of the benefits of that is at this point, we're not sure what the end of year difference will be for the investment income, whereas you could actually set a number. Okay,
Thank you.
What do you mean we could actually set a number?
from the working fund. If you had an amount that you wanted to withdraw from that reserve
And apply to
and apply
The
to the
2024
levy. Yes,
budget?
yes. It's a known number that you would be providing versus an unknown investment surplus. Because we won't know that till the end of the year.
Okay. Not sure exactly how to come up with that number, but I'm sure I could come up with a number. But one of the Councillor Oak has something he wants to add, I think.
Councillor Oak.
Yeah, I think, you know, there was a operating variance report that Julia provided last meeting, and it was showing like 659,000 over budget as far as on the investment income up till the end of September. I don't believe it's going to go below that with interest. So, you know, we do have a number that has been presented to council as a minimum. You know, we still have October, November, December still, and there's going to be interest going. So there's a 650,000 ish more than what we budgeted for. That is a known number in that. I have some suggestions of how maybe to use that down the road here in our capital discussions, but I'm open to suggestions on that. I think the working capital fund or this investment income, because it's 650,000 of unbudgeted money that we weren't planning on. It's a good news story, unfortunately, about interest rates being this high in this scenario, but not on the other side of the equation. So that's where we're trying to maybe utilize this interest that we've gained to help offset the tax rate for the other side of the equation, right? So.
Thank you. Ms. Warwick, do you have something?
Through you, Mayor Finch. I just wanted to add on to Councillor Oak's comments about the Q3 report. A portion of that variance will be attributed to the user fee budget at the end of the year as well. So that variance doesn't all stay in the levy fund.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for staff? Councillor Vaughn, you had something?
Yes, so to not leave it kind of hanging in the air there, in terms of a number, would you like us to come up with a number? Like, how about $300,000?
Ms. Masula Colson?
$300,000, and then there might be other projects or something else further on in the budget that you guys would be maybe discussing. Should we maybe?
How about
consider-
just put $300,000, thinking of that in terms of levy and user fees as a amount out of that 600, so that's about half. So it would be nice, just because that's a number I've put out on to see what kind of impact that might have, doing a prorated off to user fee and levy on these actual increases. Just as a beginning talking item.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, Councillor, Ms. Masula Colson and then Councillor Oak?
And just to go back to the OPP, just want to ensure that I've got exactly what council was looking for there. Something of like an analysis, maybe of the last 4 years of what our OPP costs were, to give you a better idea of the fluctuations. Is there anything else or?
Thank you. Yeah, that I was gonna, before we went on to the next topic, I was gonna suggest that we'd see what the last 4 years were with fluctuations and see, you know, what it would look like if we were to look at 50,000 out of that reserve just towards this year's numbers and still keep a healthy, that'd still be 250,000 in there ish. And so be nice to know what that looks like and just to see what kind of swings we have had. And just a further comment, yeah, I'd support taking a look at taking some money out of the working fund. Just in light of some of the projects that we have and are going to potentially have in the next few years here, we have to start thinking about both levy and reserves and debt financing as a strategy, right? So I think I note that the mayor and deputy mayor in the county negotiations and county budgets, there's a number of items that reserves are being utilized for some projects, and so good or bad, but I think there's still some reason for those reserves that were put in place to help weather the storm in some cases. So
Thank you. Deputy, oh, sorry, Councillor Neve, I believe had his hand up first, and then we'll go to you, Deputy.
And I was just wondering too, if maybe at the end or after year end, we would be able to get a sense of user fees and levy investment income from that working, like just the idea of what the final number would be, just to have an idea. Because I know we threw out 300,000, but I'm not sure how much of that is, you know, in this year, how much of it's levy based and how much of it's user fee based.
Okay, Ms. Warwick, do you have a comment?
Through your Mayor Finch, my estimates right now are approximately 30% to user fee. But at the Q4 2023, that would show the actual breakdown,
Okay,
which
thank you.
doesn't happen until into the new year, that Q4 report.
And then Deputy, go ahead, please.
Yeah, just a comment. The $650,000. Do we know that's the exact number at the end of the year? So how are we going to say? Oh, I'm sorry. So, but at the end of the year, how are we going to say how many dollars we got there? Like that's, to me, that's pretty difficult to say, put $300,000 away or use it. And at the end of the year, we don't know what that number is yet.
Ms. Masua Coulson.
And I think that's why we're kind of suggesting looking at the working fund reserve rather than the investment income.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Oak, did you have a comment?
yeah, just to Deputy Mayor, yeah, that 659 is till the end of September, and you know, all indications are with the way interest rates are stable from October, November, and December. I expect that number probably to be pretty close to $1 million by the time we're all said and done, versus 168,000 or something that we had in the budget. So there's probably 750 to 800,000 over and above what we were potentially budgeting. So I think even 300,000 might be a safe number to use in that. But if we agree to do it out of the working capital fund, I'm fine with that, and maybe could utilize that investment income on some other project-based items down the road here. So it's we're going to have to be creative when it comes to budgets this year, because we've got some items that need to be done, and so yeah. I'm thinking that we have to utilize all the tools that we have. One of the items we haven't talked about is also in here whether any DCs were being used in any of these projects. And so that's something before we start the capital side of things. I wanted to know if there'd been any projects where DCs for 2024 were included in the budget.
Ms. Masuda Carlson, comment?
I do not believe there have been any projects for 2024 for DCs.
Ms. Warwick?
Through you, Mayor Finch, I'll just add on, in the operating budget though, for the DC background study, we have budgeted to use some funds from the DC reserves to offset the cost of the background study.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments, questions for staff? Okay, not seeing any. Ms. Masuda Carlson?
I think we'll move on to the review of the capital projects. Sorry.
Councillor Vaughn, go ahead.
Yes, can I sneak one more in, please?
Certainly.
Okay, on this budget summary, also in green, but I don't know if it's a change green or just green. There's the MPAC tax levy revenue based on growth estimate of 271,000, which didn't change from last summary. And so is that a real number, or is that still our best estimate at this point?
Ms. Warwick?
Through you, Mayor Finch, that's still our best estimate as of this time. We haven't received the final numbers from MPAC yet at this time.
Okay, and we're expecting that around mid-December, I think. Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's nothing further, we're moving on right along. Ms. Masuda Carlson?
Okay, we'll try that again. We'll start with the review of the capital projects by department.
Councillor Oak, you had something?
Yeah, just wondering in the
Sorry, Don. Don. Pick up strategy.
I didn't
replacement
want him
strategy.
to feel left out here with his report, so.
Way you go, Don. You're ready to go whenever you are.
Yes, through you, Mayor Finch, just give a very brief overview. So this is a culmination of discussions that involved our two managers, Shane Timmermans and Alyssa Keller, the Chief Becker, and Mike Rolfe, and CAO and the treasurer. So this is a combined effort of all to come up with a strategy to make an affordable way to move forward with the pickup truck purchases. It is a little creative. Some pickup trucks have been deferred. Others are proposed to be transferred. We do have some vehicle. There's one vehicle that's still in usable condition that's being cycled out or proposed to be cycled out of the environmental services that Chief Becker has offered his opinion that it's still a serviceable vehicle for him to use in the rec department. The key part of this is the transfer of the building department pickup that's approximately halfway through its life cycle. Transfer that to the rec department, and it would be transferred at its depreciated value, which is halfway through its life cycle. And then in the building department budget, there is a budget for a new pickup truck. And then from there, I know all of these folks would be happy to answer any specific questions about their part of this. But I did want to answer Councillor Oak's questions. Yes, I did mix up those two numbers on the vehicles. So vehicle, the 2008 GMC vehicle number 103. I mixed that up with the, so in the chart, in the report, it has the first vehicle is the 2008 GMC Sierra, vehicle number 103 at replacement cost of 70,000 with no 2024 budget impact. That is the vehicle that we were proposing to transfer from environmental services. But in Chief Becker's report, I switched them around. So the 2012 GMC Sierra 120, which is in my report, its replacement value is 70,000. The proposed budget of 20,000 is the depreciated cost to transfer the building department truck. So since I got those two numbers reversed, there was no report, no capital budget request sheet submitted for truck 120 because there was no impact to the budget. So I apologize. I just switched those two around. And with that, we take any questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Mr. Giverson. Any comments? Mr. Oak, go ahead, please.
Yeah, just a question. On the first part of the report there, it talks about the proposed standard specs. And that pickups will be half-ton, extended cab, short box, four-wheel drive. Now, I guess the question I have is, does this, are we narrow, is the spec too narrow that it's going to disqualify certain manufacturers from actual bidding on a tender if we're this specific? And just wondering, as another point of discussion, do all our vehicles have to be pickup trucks?
Mr. Giverson.
Through you, Mayor Finch, since we didn't have anybody else raise their hand. So this was a group discussion. I'm trying to obtain some type of consistency with the spec. And the idea here is that in the future, if we, if so directed, that vehicles can be moved between different departments, that at least we would have a standardized specification. So a vehicle that would be used in the building department, which I'm sure Mike would be happy to use a smart car to do his building inspections, but that vehicle wouldn't be suitable to redeploy to roads or to rec. So the attempt here is to get reasonable consistency so that we can redeploy if necessary to do so. We did look at all manufacturers. That is the reason why the extended cab / crew cab, because some manufacturers don't have one or the other. But as far as we know, the five main vehicle manufacturers all have a pickup truck that has one or the other.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Oak, something else?
Of course. I think we'll talk about some of the other ones as we go through the sheets. I think, and as far as maybe the transportation capital replacement reserve that is being recommended for one of the potential units. So there was a little bit of questions whether it was or it wasn't, depending on the 10-year forecast and what the sheet said are two different things. So I'm just wanting to heads up that that'll be a question when we get to that point. But the one thing that I have a question about is the one vehicle that's potentially looking to be recommended as a 1-ton pickup instead of the 3/4 truck and 3/4 ton. And just wondering, I believe we also have a 1-ton truck in the maybe in the transportation group, and just wondering whether we really need a 1-ton truck in this group, and whether there could be some sharing of vehicles when and if needed in a scenario where you do need a larger vehicle, and whether you really need a 1-ton truck for 364 days where you could use a 1-ton for 1 day sort of thing. So I'm just asking that question, because 150,000 for a vehicle versus 70,000 is a sizable difference.
Welcome, Melissa. Go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Finch. So there is, I guess, answering your question on whether a vehicle could be borrowed. We don't have the ability to borrow a vehicle, say from the transportation department from November 15th to April 15th. They're in winter operations. We can't hinder snow plowing or any of those operations for something such as a water main break. A heavier weight vehicle is primarily being proposed due to the towing capacity. Our trailers right now are too heavy to be safely towed for the job that needs to be done.
Thank you. Follow up, Mr. Oak.
Yeah, and thanks, Alyssa, for that. Just a question then, how many, in an average year, how many days would you actually need a 1-ton truck to potentially utilize for towing a heavy trailer?
Alyssa, go ahead, Ms. Keller.
Through you, Mayor Finch, it's hard to quantify the amount of days, but we do have a valve turning program that takes place all year round. We have a sewer flushing program that takes place all year round. We have main breaks and other obstacles that we have to face. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Mr. Oak? Any questions from other members of council? Councillor Vaughn, go ahead.
Yeah, kind of a comment. This particular memo is talking about 7 or 8 trucks, depending upon how you want to count them. And so when I just scan down the entire budget Excel spreadsheet, whatever, I see about 20 trucks for the whole of South Huron now. Some of them are, I guess, in good shape because they're not in this memo, and others are not. And so I'm just thinking in terms of as a overall strategy or fleet strategy. We have in the past talked about potential climate change, hybrid type vehicles, electric vehicles. Do we need as many as 20 trucks? Is there room for sharing? Councillor Oak has sort of touched on that as well. And I'm just wondering if we are looking in the 2024 year to coming up with a sort of fleet strategy, because this whole issue of trucks, how many we have, what size we need, who's using them, do we need them full-time, part-time, whatever, comes up every year. And so rather than having the question and answer period every year that goes over the same kinds of things, are we looking at a fleet strategy for municipal vehicles?
Mr. Iverson, do you want to take that, or Ms. Masood also?
Let me just start that one. I think the way this strategy worked for this year is because we're behind for a couple of replacements, and this was to catch us up. And now, as far as moving forward, we are in discussions on how we're going to move forward for next steps. Yeah.
Okay, because I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I, for one, next year at this time would rather be looking at what's our fleet strategy. I get the catch up piece, but I'd like to be seeing a fleet strategy going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Giverson, go ahead, please, and then Mr. Oak.
Yes, through you, Mayor Finch. I would love to have a fleet of electric vehicles. But we're not quite there yet. And this is triaging. We haven't purchased a new pickup truck since 2020. And I was reminded today that by the time we purchase these trucks, it'll be 4 years. So we're bleeding from all fronts with this. So this is really an attempt to get caught up, but it's triaging a very severe problem. Several invoices have gone through in recent times for transmission repairs and replacing transmissions, and it's very hard to continue those kind of expenses because we've let the fleet age this much. So this is to try to stop the bleeding in the most cost-effective way our entire group could try to come up with. And then after that, the idea would be to move forward with something comprehensive and don't let it get to this point again.
And Mr. Giverson, you mentioned the transmission goes out. How long is that vehicle out of service if a transmission or something like that goes out? Don, sorry, Don, your microphone.
Oh. Come on up. Mike's on.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Finch, right now we have 2 trucks with major transmission repairs going on. One truck was out of service for 2 weeks. The current truck is on its 3rd repair, hoping to piece it together. And we've been having it out of service for the last month, or about a month of extended repairs. It's been in and out trying to piece it together.
And that's in the water wastewater department?
Just
Although-
water and wastewater.
Thank you. Mr. Oak, you had a comment?
Yeah, and I guess just my comment is I appreciate that we are trying to catch up here and I like the strategy of transferring vehicles amongst departments as need be. That's the strategy that I appreciate that and so yeah, we have a fleet, and I'm as Councillor Vaughn says, hopefully during this 2024 year that there is a full-blown strategy where we can, maybe this year is the catch-up year, and then moving forward it's like 2 vehicles a year or something like that as we go through or something as moving forward. But yeah, I'm happy with the report. It's just a matter that I'm still not sold on whether we need a another 1-ton truck. So that's still my hang up, and I got to think about it until we go through the actual budget sheets here. So, but I do appreciate the thought that's gone into the report as far as transferring vehicles around and the fact that we are playing catch up, which I brought up last year at budget time, that I was very surprised that we didn't have any pickups in last year's budget, sort of thing. So anyways.
Mr. Giverson.
Mayor Finch, if you would indulge, Shane has also been working on part of our strategy moving forward. If he could provide just a brief update on some alternative fuel that he's investigating.
Certainly. Welcome, Shane.
Through you, Mayor Finch. Kind of got kickstarted in my mind when BRA was here doing the presentation at the committee of the whole meeting. They do actually make some trucks, like plow trucks also, that use gas, or sorry, why am I drawing a blank? Use natural gas. So I have been doing research on those, and it actually is it's looking actually fairly promising. And also with a fueling station possibly really close to us, it may be something feasible in the future to look at.
Okay.
Very early stages in the looking into.
Great, thanks very much, Mr. Timmons. Councillor Vaughn.
Okay, I have one last question about the report Mr. Giverson put together, and it has to do with around the whole specifications. You were talking about standard wheels and trim package, and then you were talking about white in color. So our trucks are red today, so you're talking about a fleet that actually looks white, because we might get more money on the trade-ins for that, but so far what we're trading in, we're not likely to get much money for. So I'm just wondering if we approve these trucks that are in the budget, are we going to be approving them as council on the basis of changing our coloring to white? And if we do change our color to white, what does that mean for the ones that are currently red? Like, we're not necessarily going to be painting, are we?
Mr. Giverson.
Through you, Mayor Finch, I was hoping to employ Councillor Neeb's art group to do some creative work with the pickups. No, this The idea of proposing the vehicles to be white is, there was some research done, and there's certain colors of vehicles that have the maximum resale. And and if you look around, the colors that you typically see, white, silver, black are the top of the list for getting the maximum resale. So that was the idea to put this forward, but it really is intended to spark a discussion. But accepting this report doesn't set this in stone. What we staff expected to do is we'll bring something back in a policy form. But we wanted to get that information out that there's been quite a bit of research done on this to prepare this report. And there's thought behind what was specified, the types of vehicles, the need for four-wheel drive and all of those features, including the color of the vehicle. But it doesn't have to be white. And it's a corporate decision as well. It's not staff, like it's council's decision if you want to maintain the corporate color.
Councillor Oak.
Yeah, thanks. With the way we have our policy and the use of the vehicles, I'm not sure that we have to worry about the trade-in value at the end of the day. But I'm also aware that there's some information, and maybe with the report that does come back, white is one of the worst colors for visibility, as I understand too, when to be seen on the roads. So I'm not sure whether that should be something that investigated as well. They say a white vehicle is one of the ones to be in an accident first, sort of thing, because it's not as visible. So just wondering if you do the report back, that investigate that part as well. So
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. Ms. Sukowski, can we read that recommendation, please?
The South Huron Council received the report from Don Giberson, General Manager of Infrastructure Development, pickup truck replacement strategy.
And a mover, please. Moved by Councillor Neeb, seconded by Councillor Vaughn. Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And that carries with 7. Thank you. 4.3, please.
Okay, we're starting at the review of capital projects by department. So there isn't anything listed in general admin. So we'll be moving on to building department.
Mr. Rolfe, go ahead, please.
Thank you, through you, Mayor Finch. The only capital proposal that the building department has is for the pickup truck, which we've just discussed. I will note there was a font error, I guess, in some of the verbiage. The last sentence was cut off. So the last sentence reads, the building department will utilize the building capital replacement reserve to fund the net difference with the cost for the new truck. I'm open or happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from members of council? Councillor Oak.
thanks for clarifying that, Mike. In the sheet itself, it says building capital replacement reserve 70,000. So, and maybe that's the difference there, because in the reserve sheets that we have here, there's only like 37,000 in the reserve. So I'm not sure how we're going to come up with 70,000 unless there's some stuff that's built up this year that hasn't been put into that reserve. The sheets that I have anyway says building development capital replacement reserve, if that's the one we're using, and it's showing at the end of 2023 37,905. So I'm just wondering how we're coming up with 70,000 in that reserve.
Julia, do you want to take that?
Do you, Mayor Finch? So you're correct in the number that's in the building capital replacement reserve. The building department also has 3 other reserves, one of which is a capital reserve fund. And that specific reserve has a balance, an estimated balance at the end of this year of nearly $173,000. Another consideration is that the building department truck that they're currently using is proposed to be utilized by the rec center and they will be purchasing it from the building department. So those funds will go into the building replacement reserve.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Rolfe. Okay. And,
Okay.
okay, we're on to the next one.
Okay, the next is emergency services.
Any questions for the chief? Chief, do you want to comment?
Thank you, through Mayor Finch. So the first project is the replacement of the PPE for personal protective equipment. This is spread out, so it's not all the sets at one time. So currently budgeting for 7 sets of bunker gear with the helmets and boots, for 7 sets for each station. And these have a 10-year lifespan on them, based on the NFPA guideline.
Thank you. Any questions for the chief on that? Councillor Vaughn.
Yeah, seven for each of the stations this year, but last year I think there were only 5.
Yes, so depending on when they were hired and when they were purchased, but this year they're coming up, there's 7 each station requiring replacement.
Okay, so it does move around a bit
Yep.
from year to year.
It does move around. And the only other thing to note is there's a percentage share from Blue Water that they contribute to that as well.
Okay, yeah, right. Okay, I did see that. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Any other questions on that one? Not seeing any. Chief, next topic, please.
Project number 2 is for the replacement, excuse me, of the portable radios. These radios are 20 years old, and it's becoming extremely hard to get replacement batteries and parts for them because they're because of their age. We currently have 10 radios that are out of service right now because we can't get batteries. I was able to procure 4 batteries last week, and they've been on order for almost 6 months. So this will replace our batteries and our radios to new current technology.
Thank you for that. Any questions on that? Councillor Vaughn?
Yes, I just note there's 40 radios in all.
Yep.
And looking at, that's about $5,000 a piece. So what kind of radios are these? That kind of, look at that, he brings props. Love it.
That's with me 24 hours a day.
Okay, so it is a very much a portable. It's
Yeah,
not.
so what this is, so the firefighters, once they're out of the vehicles on the scenes, this is how they communicate. Incident command, accountability, incident safety officer, and then firefighters entering the structures and stuff like that. This is how they communicate. So it's a health and safety, their lifeline.
Okay, and not in this capital request, but so do we have radios in the trucks themselves that are stationary? Okay,
Yes.
so these are the ones
Yep.
on the scene.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, great.
Just clarification, with those radios, chief, do they have an earpiece at all for in case there's a lot of noise when they're outside? Or
Yes,
not?
they have a extended mic, lapel mic, plus then the earpiece plugs into the lapel mic.
Okay, so they're, okay, that's all I want to know. Thank you. Mr. Oak, you had something?
Yeah, just a question to Chief Becker. Is it it'd be your recommendation to replace all 40 at once?
Like I said, the current 6550s that is in the photograph, we can't get batteries for. I was able to get a few batteries, but I still have 10 radios right now that don't have batteries. So that's 10 portables out of service. So we're getting down to the nitty gritty. So this model here is brand new. This is 3 models newer than what we're going to be replacing. So, and of course they don't make the same battery like everything else.
Great, thank you, Mr. Oak.
And I see these also qualify as part of the shared agreement with Blue Water.
That's correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Deputy.
And Jeremy, the old and new are compatible. if you keep the old and buy new, you don't have to buy them all at one time, correct?
The portables?
Yes.
Yeah, so the old portables, we would surplus once we have the new ones. But the new stuff matches up to our current systems.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dietrich, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What's the lifespan of the new ones, Jamie?
Thank you, Councillor Dietrich. Lifespan should be 10 to 15 years. However, they do get put through the rugged test of elements and sometimes heat. But I mean, we still have 20-year-old portables that are currently working right now. Our problem is the batteries. But some of the parts are becoming harder and harder to get to.
Okay, thank you. Very well. Councillor Neeb.
Well, and I think you've stressed the useful life of the ones that you do have now. It's a wonder that the electronics are still working 20 years later. So good on you for and good on your team for keeping that under control. But who knows? You know, 5 of them could go tomorrow too, right? Depending on the age. So this is a good investment.
We have been utilizing the Huron Park ones to as parts models to make 2 or 3 into one. We've been scavenging what we can, but we're getting by, and moving forward with the new ones will be a great addition.
Thank you for that, Chief. Any other questions? Okay, not seeing. Next item, Mr. Becker.
Project number 3 calls for the replacement of the 1995 tanker, which is at the Dashwood Station. This truck is quite old and is going to require a lot of work if it's not replaced in the next year.
Thank you.
Replacement of this truck will be a pumper tanker, where this is a straight tanker. So it'll be a dual purpose truck going forward.
Thank you, Councillor Oak.
Thank you, Mayor. So as part of our earlier discussion on the investment income side of things, I was just wondering whether there be, and in light of some other projects that might be moving forward in the next replacement of a fire station maybe or something, wondering if we could potentially look at, in our analysis between the working capital fund and the investment income, whether there'd be some availability to utilize some of those funds to help not drain as much out of our fire capital replacement reserve to purchase this truck. So I'm just wondering, right now in the budget sheet it says there's like 542,000 that might come out of the fire capital replacement reserve, and just wondering if something between the investment fund or investment income or the working capital fund, whether we could look at 200,000 or 300,000 to go towards this and leave that in the reserve for future. And but we also have and so in I respect your motioning there, Don. But my other thought was that further on in the budget or in our sheet that we have coming is the recommendation had come from the fire committee to potentially look at some setting some reserve money aside for a hall replacement and of 315,000. So I was thinking between using some of that income also towards that recommendation as well, the 315,000 to build up, because whatever we do with the hall, we're going to have to look at various sources of funding, because we want to know how we're going to pay for it, and there is money in a reserve. I'd like to build a little bit more money in the reserve, especially with some found money that we maybe got this year with investment income that we weren't budgeting for, to help go towards that. And then, you know, obviously grants and things that we can pursue, I guess, but just wondering if there would be any thought about utilizing some of those other, instead of just taking it all out of the fire capital replacement reserve.
Thank you. Any comments from anyone? Okay, thank you very much for your comments.
I think it needs to be replaced. It's long overdue for that unit. And I don't know whether we should be making a recommendation at this point in time. I'm open to suggestions, Rebecca.
Ms. Masood Carlson.
I don't think at this time, because we are bringing more information back anyway overall. But yeah, we would want a resolution for that, for the use of the investment income, if that is how council wants to move forward.
Okay, any other comments from council on that topic? Councillor Oak and then Councillor Neef.
Yeah, I guess my thought is in light that we're potentially moving forward with a station down the road here, I don't want to drain that reserve, and that I want to at least maintain that the reserve, and if we can utilize some other sources, that I would like to see if we could do that.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Neef.
No, I just wanted to echo Councillor Oak's comments too. I think it's important that we try to be a little bit creative here too with how we're funding these projects, and if we're able to pull from that investment income too to offset some of the costs from our fire reserve, that'll make a big difference too down the road when we're potentially looking at any levy costs or any grant costs, etc. So no, I'm in full agreement. I think we should be looking at that.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Councillor Vaughn.
Yeah, I would only add that with, especially when you keep going back to the investment income, that there's lots of different ways we'd like to see that used. And some is maybe for capital, some is maybe for some of the fire services projects that we have agreed are priority, but there's also the taxpayer at the end of the day that in terms of the tax rate. So I did hear the CAO mention that we need a resolution, but are you looking for a resolution tonight, or are you looking for, like, in terms of absolutely how we want to apportion that money, or are you looking for a resolution from us that basically is asking you and Julia to basically be able to come back and tell us what's doable from the working capital reserves or with some of that investment money?
Ms. Masood Carlson.
I think possibly the second. I'll defer to Julia to see if that would be helpful. If we had a resolution, possibly giving us that you'd like a framework, or we bring back information on what we think would be doable from the investment income.
Yeah, that's basically what I'm suggesting. I'm not suggesting tonight that we say it go to fire, we go to tax reduction, but I would like to see us ask you for coming back to us with a framework so that we can actually talk through how we want to do that.
And are we able to bring that back for both the investment income as well as a working fund? That way you would have information on both.
I think that would be great.
Very well. Okay, you have that, Ms. Masood Carlson.
I can maybe help start out if that helps. We've got it.
I've got a draft. So that South Huron Council directs staff to bring back a framework on what could be considered for the investment income as well as working fund reserve.
Somebody, Ms. Masood Carlson, comment? Ms. Ward, go ahead.
Mayor Finch, I guess I would just ask for more clarification on what we will be coming back with. The working fund reserve is pretty open-ended of what council can direct staff to use it for. So the policy is a recommended minimum of 1% or 75% of the amount of current year's taxes receivable. So the current year taxes receivable number does fluctuate quite a bit throughout the year. Right now, that 75% would put us at just over $1 million recommended minimum balance. So our estimated balance for 2023 is quite a bit higher than that. So it's truly at council discretion what that working fund is used for.
And perhaps maybe we can bring back about $200,000 of investment income and $300,000 of working fund. I believe those were a couple of the numbers that were talked about. Does that sound reasonable, just to maybe provide the impacts for that, or were you looking for more?
Councillor Oak.
Yeah, so the 200,000 would be something to look at coming off of the operating side of the budget, and 300,000 to come off of the capital side. Is that what you were thinking, or in our discussions? I think that yeah, that would be something that I'd like to see. Yeah, for sure. I don't know whether we want different scenarios, what it would look like, 200,000 and 300,000, and 300,000 and 400,000. I don't know. Just that's a starting point for sure.
Councillor Vaughn.
Yeah, I think we're struggling here because we're not the accountants and we don't have the books. So we don't know exactly what words to use to ask you to go away. So we are looking for scenarios. It would be good to see what ramifications it had for our corporation by taking $200,000 or $300,000 out of working capital, or taking out of investment incomes that we've had in recent years. So I think we're kind of looking to you for a little bit of help here too, in terms, I don't know how to phrase that perfectly. To tell you that comes out of operating or it comes out of capital, I don't know. That's a little bit too far in the weeds.
Okay, I think we can bring back something for, I'm gonna say $200,000 of investment and $300,000 of capital of the working fund. Bring back some information on that, so then council can at least consider those options.
Councillor Oak.
Yeah, we had talked about in our discussion on the priorities page there of some money to help reduce the levy amount with on that front. But I was also hoping that we could reduce the amount that we were draining the capital reserve for the fire truck, and potentially look at the 315,000 recommendation that the fire committee had put towards putting into the reserve as well. So I don't know how you want to look at that, or where that might come from to do that, but I think those are all thoughts that I had that we could potentially look at, and that's further on down the agenda. But I just, as we're discussing this, I want to see if that's something that could be looked at the same time.
Ms. Masuda-Colson, comment? Or Councillor Vaughn, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I think it's also helpful that Julia talked about what our policy was, in terms of this is what our policy is, this is what you should have in the bank, if you will. And she's mentioned a couple of times we have substantially more. So we don't know what that substantially more is. To have all that in a report back to us would make some sense too.
Ms. Masuda-Colson.
Through the mayor, I would also add too, though, that it is a policy that we should look at as well, and that we were going to look at next year, because it might not be enough moving forward. So that was one of the considerations as well. So I think we've got a kind of a resolution. We'll bring back information on the investment and the capital, the working fund, and to provide you options. Okay.
Councillor Oak.
Yeah, and I'd asked about the OPP fund as well. And see if there's something that we could maybe reduce out of that reserve as well, to go towards the contract.
Okay, thank you.
That's
You will
whatever
capture-
it's 50,000 or 100,000 or whatever that number might be.
Okay, you will capture that, Madam Clerk.
That South Huron Council directs staff to bring back information on scenarios for what could be considered for 200,000 to be used from the investment income reserve, 300,000 from the working fund reserve, and 50 to 100,000 from the OPP reserve.
Does that sound correct? Julia, sorry.
Through you, Mayor Finch, I'll just specify there is no investment income reserve. So that would all be flowing through working fund reserve essentially.
Okay.
So that South Huron Council directs staff to bring back information on scenarios for what could be considered for 200,000 to be used from investment income, 300,000 from the working fund reserve, and 50 to 100,000 from the OPP reserve.
Does that sound accurate, Ms. Ward? Thank you. Any other comments? Do we have some recommendation? Councillor Vaughn? Nope.
I don't have any more comments.
Okay,
Do you want me to move that?
it's a conversation. I figured you might want to, yeah.
Okay, I so move.
Councillor Oak, second it. Any further discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And that carries a 7. Thank you very much. Okay. Councillor Vaughn.
I do have a question though about the project that we were talking about. Okay, when I'm reading through different pieces of equipment in your fleet with the fire services, and I'm seeing pumper tanker and I'm seeing tanker and replacement and things like that. So I'm a little bit confused about pumper tankers, and also too, if we did some kind of a merging, I'm thinking with Huron Park equipment, but I'm not 100% on that. And I'm just wondering if we need all these tankers, pumper tankers.
Chief?
Okay, so this truck here is a strictly a tanker. So its job is to transport water from the hydrant to the fire. That's all it can do. Pumper tankers can actually pump water and fight the fire as well as operate as a tanker. So they're a dual purpose truck. We started purchasing pumper tankers in 2002. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 of them now. This would be number 5. So when you have 2 pumper tankers in your station, one goes down for maintenance or repair, you still have a fully functioning fire truck that can do all the jobs in that station. So with the reallocation of the Huron Park vehicles, they were allocated to the other stations, and we surplus the 1992 tanker, and we surplus the Huron Park Rescue last year. The current amount of vehicles that we have is what's required to meet the fire underwriter survey, which is who sets the insurance rates for the residents of the area by passing the Superior Tanker Shuttle, which was also a recommendation in the Fire Master Plan to complete again. When we did the last Superior Tanker Shuttle, we relied on our neighbors as well as what we currently had in our apparatus. So with what we have and our neighbors is what it takes to pass that Superior Tanker Shuttle.
And that will be the case in the future as well, or after we buy this will be?
It would still be the case, but
It'll
this would move us from having a standalone tanker to a pumper tanker that can do dual purpose.
2 jobs.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And the other thing to note on this one, this is a cost sharing on Blue Water, 22.2% contributed from the Blue Water agreement.
Right, which is good.
Yep.
Very good. Councillor McLeod-Haggett.
So just commenting, Jeremy, on what you said, if one was down, then you would have a backup. Would
So
you not potentially have a backup from our Exeter station that would be able to be called out?
You could, but it would not be at, so right now we have a pumper and a tanker in Dashwood, where last year we, excuse me, replaced with a pumper tanker. This would be the second truck as a pumper tanker, so that if the one truck was out of service, you would still have a vehicle or an apparatus to respond in that location. Otherwise, you'd have 20 firefighters showing up to the hall and not be able to go to a call because there's no truck.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, moving along, Chief. Number 4.
Excuse me, project number 4 calls for the purchase of a PPE gear dryer. Currently, the firefighters that launder their gear and the gear extractor that we purchased 2 years ago wash their gear and then hang it in the respective station to dry, sometimes taking 3 to 4 days to dry, which means that bunker gear is out of service. Also allows for potential mold or growth because it's damp, it's wet, and the air movement is not there. This would put the gear back in service 3 to 4 hours after it's washed, which would also give the firefighters more incentive to wash their gear on a more regular basis. But all washed, dried, and done in 1 day and back in service.
Any questions for the chief on that? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you. Number 5, Mr. Chief Beckett.
Number 5 is the $100,000 recommended by the Fire Services Committee to put into reserve, or sorry, to put towards the site preparation for a station replacement.
Thank you. Comments at all? Okay, not seeing any. Next item, please.
Then we're looking at cemetery. Turn it over to Alex for this one.
Madam Clerk.
So this is a proposed project for a cemetery landscape plan. So pursuant to the 2021 cemetery master plan, it was recommended that we get additional columbarium niches developed in 2022. We have kind of pushed this cemetery landscape plan the last year.
I think it's a cemetery fence first.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
Apologies. Skipped over that. Okay, sorry. So the first one was the Exeter Cemetery Fence Project. So that is the Exeter and District Heritage Foundation had requested to move forward with the erection of the fence at the Exeter Cemetery. It's to be completed in 2 phases. So the first phase is along Highway or County Road 83. Staff have been working with the foundation to get specifications in order prior to going to tender for that portion of the project. And all of this funding is based on the Exeter and District Heritage Foundation doing fundraising. So there's no cost to tax levy.
Mr. Oak.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The reserve has 136,000 in it, the report that we've got, and this is 138. Has there been other monies come in during 2023 that hasn't been assigned yet to this reserve to be able to cover that full project?
Ms. Warwick?
Through you, Mayor Finch. Yes, there have been additional dollars collected in 2023, and this number is based on the total dollars collected at that point in time when this draft budget was compiled.
Thank you. Councilor Oak?
So there would be enough money in the reserve to cover this full project if need be. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions in regards to this? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Wolf, whenever you're ready. Oh, sorry, Councilor Vaughn, you had something.
Yeah, I do want to go back to Jeremy for a minute and to Dashwood and that last project. I'm sorry, I was fumbling for papers. It wasn't in my budget book. It was on another spot on my desk. So, okay, this is the $100,000 part that was talking about site preparation work for the construction of a new Dashwood fire station. And so when I look at this one, I know we put this to the budget for discussion, and we have so far haven't had any yet. And so I have a bit of an issue. This kind of sounds like we've made a decision on where the site is to be. And I don't know that we have made a decision as to where the site has to be. We have had some discussions around the council table about facilities assessment. We've had some discussion about if approved at the budget. We've also had a couple of good minutes from the Dashwood Fire Committee meetings that have talked about or brought to our attention many of the different discussions that the Fire Committee has actually had. But we've been kind of talking about it and having discussion for about 1.5 years. We've put it on a priority, but we haven't had a staff report come back. In the summer of 2022, we had a very lengthy motion that was passed asking for a number of things, some of which the committee's been working on in discussion, but we've not had a formal response come back to council. And I think council deserves to have a report from the staff and from the fire committee about things like, let's talk about the location. Is it going to be in Dashwood? Is it going to be in Crediton? Is it going to be someplace else? Are we going to be able to use any DC charges for this new fire station? Preliminary costs. I know we're all concerned about where we're going to get the money, but we really don't have any preliminary costs to kind of kick around and what we might get for that. The grants, FCM, I know there's been some discussion about FCM as a possibility, but I don't know how far a possibility that is. Just the whole funding options, what our discussion's been with Lambton Shores. We know that we've pretty much nailed down the Blue Water negotiation and agreement with them. Yeah, so what I would like to recommend is that we have a report from staff from all of the information that's been gathered in the last 1.5 years since we've had our first discussions really about what are we going to do with Dashwood, and perhaps have a committee of the whole so we can hammer it out. I don't think just going for 100,000 is the real issue. This is the tip of the iceberg, but it just happens to be talking about the Dashwood site. So that assumes we've picked Dashwood, and I don't think we have.
Okay, Mrs. Carlson, you have
I will just, most of the wording when there were recommendations, I believe were mostly for the replacement of the Dashwood site versus actually a location. I know some had the location. I think the Fire Services Advisory Committee had the location, but I think that the wind turbine resolution had it kind of stated as a replacement of the Dashwood Fire Hall. And at that point, then I believe that's how council had passed it as well. And to your point, absolutely, the minutes are coming back. And after that, we are still, the committee still has some of those outstanding items, but certainly could provide council an update to that in the early next year. I think at this point, it's just putting the money of funds away into the reserve and for future discussion by council.
Thank you. Turn to Councillor Neeb.
Well, and I think too, we did have a discussion as a committee, and Councillor Oak and Deputy Mayor Dietrich and Jeremy can maybe step in to maybe supplement what I'm about to say. But when we were addressing the location, it's really to do with the fact that we have volunteer firefighters and the response time under the NFPA guidelines, and moving it would impact response times. There's also the fact that And we know we need to replace the facility due to there's no exhaust system, there's no showers, there's health and safety concerns as well. So something does need to be done. And again, going back to those NFPA guidelines, if we move it because of where our volunteer firefighters are living, it could increase response time to other areas of the municipality. And I don't want to put those areas at risk by moving it, considering where the majority of our firefighters live. So that should provide enough context alone. I mean, if we did want to look at going to a full-time department, that's going to be very costly. So we're very reliant on our volunteer firefighters and where they're living and where they're working in order to respond effectively. So again, I think any discussion about moving it imperils parts of the municipality.
Thank you. Chief, do you have a comment at all?
Excuse me, excuse me. I believe there was a motion when the last, if not the last, the second last committee report came to council with that location actually specified. And I believe there's actually a resolution on the books from either 2020 or 2021 that was made by council to build a station in Dashwood. So that's maybe something that we should dig back up, and we can talk about that in the future as well.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Oak.
Yeah, to the CEO's response there, that this 100,000 that we're talking about is going into the reserve. There's a further report that potentially of another 315,000 that was a recommendation to put into the reserve, knowing that we're going to have to do something with the station. So then it's a matter of taking the information we have, and there's still some legwork that's being done right at the moment, but to come back to council to make a final decision of where a staff report to come back for council to make a final decision on where things are at. Councillor Neeb is right. There are some things that we have to keep in mind, but at the same token, there's some investigation that has been done by the fire chief and the chief building official about the Crediton location as far as the actual property in Crediton, as far as whether that would be that location would be available to build something on. So there's still some work that needs to come back to council yet before we make the final decision. So tonight we're gathering funds here in my mind to eventually do something. It's going into reserves right at the moment. So.
Ms. Warwick, go ahead, please.
Through you, Mayor Finch. I just want to clarify that this capital request form wouldn't move 100,000 from the amenity fee reserve into a different reserve, just based on how our agreement is worded. We wouldn't be able to move funds out of that reserve into another one. We need to get approval on expenditure. So this would essentially be earmarking funds within that reserve for future expenditure. It wouldn't move it into the fire capital replacement reserve. Just
good, thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, sorry, thank you for that clarification. When I meant the 315 in the other. So yes, thank you.
Good, Councillor McLeod-Haggett.
Going off of what Councillor Neeb was saying about response times and locations of firefighters, I think we have to look at the number of firefighters that are currently on the Dashwood Fire Department, how many from the Huron Park Fire Department got transferred over, and then look at possible recruitments from different areas to match up the handful that are retirement age that may not be attending all of the fires due to their capabilities.
Chief, do you want to respond?
Thank you through the chair. So we just completed a recruitment, and we have sent 5 offer letters to individuals for the Dashwood station. To my knowledge, as of Friday, 4 had responded and accepted those positions. That takes us to 21 firefighters in Dashwood. To your comment on the age, I'm not sure we should maybe discuss that without HR's comments.
Thank you.
Just to clarify, I'm not trying to age discriminate anywhere across the table, just to be clear on that.
Thank you. Ms. Masula Carlson, do you have a comment? And then Councillor Oak.
Oh, my only comment was that a lot of this discussion would be good for the committee of the whole. At this point now, we're just looking at just kind of earmarking the 100,000 for the reserve.
Councillor Oak, you had a comment?
Yeah, I agree. That was going to be my suggestion, that this is a good discussion to have at our next committee of the whole. And as part of the staff report, as far as maybe for new members on council, sort of the history of when Huron Park Station closed, where the actual firefighters went that were left at Huron Park. I believe some of them went to, or the majority went to Exeter Station and not Dashwood. So those are kind of comments that, or discussions that we can have at the next committee of the whole. So
Thank you. Deputy and then Councillor Vaughn.
And also, we may have some information coming back from Lambton Shores that will maybe help along the way. So I agree. This is a committee of the whole. This is not a budget meeting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vaughn.
Yeah, I also agree totally. It's committee of the whole, lot to discuss. Love to hear about Lambton Shores. And if this is going to be looked at as an earmark as opposed to a site decision, I'm happy with that.
Thank you. Okay, there's nothing further on that. We'll skip ahead.
I think we're back to Alex and the cemetery landscape plan.
We are. Yep, exactly.
So the cemetery landscape plan is coming from the 2021 cemetery master plan recommendation to have an additional columbarium niche developed. Part of the process to get an additional columbarium installed was some site work done prior to that, as there are some processes through the Bereavement Authority of Ontario that would be required prior to the addition of any columbariums. So it's just a timeline. The idea is we get this landscaping plan completed this year and then could look at getting another columbarium installed next year. We do currently have 12 niches available for interment rate purchases left in our current columbariums.
Thank you. Any questions, Councillor Oak?
thank you, and thank you, Alex, for the report. The 12 niches that are still available, I guess the report says that the new columbarium is scheduled for 2026. Is that soon enough with lately the amount of cremations that are taking place versus burials? I'm just wondering if 2026 is the right year.
Ms. Wolf?
So based on current sales that we've had this year, we have had 4 niches. Individuals have the ability to, in theory, sell rights back as long as no one's been interred and there's no engraving on it. So we've had a couple of buybacks done this year. With cremation options as well. They have the columbarium, or there is a cremation plot or a traditional burial plot that has capacity for niches, or sorry, for cremation interments. With cremation interments as well, as there's no time, I guess, sensitivity for having the interment take place, we have noticed that we do find that a number of interments take place a little bit later. So there's the ability, if somebody is waiting for something newer, they're okay to, I guess, hold on for a bit longer. It may be something that we decide depending on how the sales go next year. It may be something coming back in next year's budget for council consideration at that time.
Thank you. Any comments for Ms. Wolf on that? Okay. We're right along then. Ms. Masula Carlson.
Okay, recreation services, back to Jeremy.
Chief.
Thank you. The first project is the playground equipment located at the Dashwood Community Center. This is a carry forward project and is a joint project 50-50 with Blue Water. Sorry, go ahead, Councillor.
Councillor Vaughn.
I wasn't sure if you were moving on. Okay, I just wanted to say that in terms of sources of funding, two things have happened in recent months. One being the South Huron Stashwood Community Fund presented to council and council approved an additional $10,000 for this purpose to come from that fund towards this project. So maybe we should update the record. And also to similarly, Blue Water at their council in July, I don't know the exact date, but it was a July meeting. They passed a motion for an additional 10,000 too. So it should bring this up to 1,000. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Chief, anything further?
And also we have a committee meeting on Thursday night of this week to discuss getting this project finalized and ready to go. And I've got some information for that committee on that. So we'll see this project by spring.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay. Oh, Julia, go ahead.
Through you, Mayor Finch. I just wanted to mention, we have updated our internal notes for these changes as you've suggested, and just up on the screen here is where we put anything highlighted in green shows that there's been a change since this original budget book was presented.
Okay, great.
Good. Thank you. Mr. Oak.
Could you send this revised one after tonight back out to us, the capital, the 10-year forecast with all the changes, if you wouldn't mind? Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Mr. Becker?
Next project is the Port Lake Park revitalization. This again is a carry forward that's carried on for a number of years. We've recently just been given authorization from the Lake Huron Water Supply to begin our project of getting the drain installed. So that's project number one. The reason for the delay on everything else, because we didn't know what the drain was going to cost us. And rather than start something and then not have enough to finish it, the drain is the biggest priority, I think, because if you can't get into the park, it's no sense having the park. So to get that water down from the south side, so that's just within the last week or two that we've been in communication with Andrew. Finally got back, so we're going to start that process, and I'll be reaching out to my colleague, Mr. Giberson, for his expertise and guidance on the drain, and probably some help from Shane as well, because they know how to move water in underground. I move it above ground. So, but anyways, that should see some construction starting early in the year.
Mr. Neeb and then Mr. Oak.
Yeah, I was just going to say it's really nice to see this in the budget again, and let's hope it stays in the budget. Again, I think this is a huge asset for South Huron, so I think it's great that we're able to drain it and put these assets in there. It's a great day park, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oak, you had something?
Thank you. So the increase there is the 62,000 that's coming from the amenity fee as part of the reserve. Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Councillor Vaughn?
Yeah, I'd just like to say too, on this project, I agree the drainage has to be dealt with, but we need to kind of circle back on scope, which was one of the commentaries we had during the wind turbine meeting, that we've lost sight of some of the scope on this project and need to get back to what are we really going to do with the washrooms. Need to have some discussions around parking, like, and attendance at that gate, to basically finalize how we're going to operate that park going forward. So just to let you know, because I don't think all those are really highlighted in the scope, with drainage being the number one item.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dietrich.
Has that project or park ever come up with a profit, or is it just the kind of a rat hole? It seems to be like we seem to be doing this for outsiders. I don't think there's that many people of our own that use it.
Councillor, can I comment before I go to
previously tonight I mentioned about recreation being subsidized I think this is one of the, depending on how you do the math, but this is one of the ones that either makes a little bit of money or at least breaks even in the municipality. So it's actually something that is making money, and I think there is some work being done by the committee on as part of the user fees, and that's coming out, that there's going to be some suggestions that would come out of this. Maybe the members that are on the committee can make some comments on that front.
Deputy, do you want to say anything?
Thank you. Yes, the user fees are definitely have to be looked at because like it's almost free now. So I think that's something that's going to help us moving forward with different projects. But we got to get started somewhere, and the drain is the biggest problem. There's a water issue there and we need that fixed. Thank you.
Councillor Vaughn?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of elements. One, it is ridiculously inexpensive to get in through the front gate right now. And we've also had past discussions about South Huron residents and their ability to get into that park at a reduced, if not free rate, considering they've been carrying this, you know, from a levy and management perspective for years and will continue to do so. In terms of who's using it, is it just outsiders? An awful lot of outsiders that are coming to South Huron and using the park and the beach. But there's also incredibly an awful lot of people from Grand Bend and from Dashwood and from other parts of South Huron that you maybe don't know, but they're going to visit that and have certainly when I do the old campaign trail in Dashwood, I hear from all manner of people who purchase the family or the season pass and really love that park and hope that we do proceed with improvements, and they want to be able to keep it and call it their own. So
Okay, thank you. Councillor Eben.
I was just going to echo some of Councillor Vaughn's comments too, because I can remember us having discussions in the past about having like an automated gate, which could potentially, you know, get rid of some of the cost of having people there at the gate that we'd have to pay. And also too, like it's a park that me and my family use as well. And I think if we made an investment, it could be a really good asset for our community. Yes, I realize it's going away from Exeter, but it still helps draw people to our region. So I think it's a valuable investment to make.
Thank you. Mr. Sue-Collins, you had a comment?
All I was going to add was the user fee revenue generation. It's also looking at the fees for the park. That information will be coming back as well.
Very well. Thank you. Any further questions? If not, we'll move on. Chief?
The current systems we have does not meet code with the changes that happened in the lobby. The fans need to be improved, as well as the chimneys need to be brought up to code. So this will see not only the snack bar, but the actual kitchen itself for the auditorium with new hood and exhaust systems.
Thank you. Questions? Okay. Oh, Deputy, go ahead.
Thank you. Just a comment. It definitely needs to be done because like Chief said, as soon as you walk in, you can smell the French fries. So definitely needs to be done.
Sounds good. Ms. Masuda-Carlson, comment.
I'll just note that the Kirkton Woodham Pool Accessibility Grant, we just missed it. It's in the green there, and it was also added into the budget. Okay.
Okay, great. Good. Chief, next item.
Next item calls for the roof replacement on the South Huron Rec Center. Part of this is a carry forward, correct, Julia? Which was the arena portion, and we've added the lobby portion to this. This project was, like I said, a partial carry forward. We were waiting on our roof scans, which were done in the early fall. It took a little time to get those, but we've now got that complete and know where we need to make the investment there. And doing both of these at the same time, we'll see some savings from, rather than start one project and then do another one. So doing both at the same time will save us some. I'm not gonna say a lot of money, but it will save us some.
Okay, Councillor Oak.
So thank you, Mayor. The roof replacement there, so we had set some money aside last year, the 285,000. Now, I guess the question is there's 150 in there for as a coming out of Trillium. Is that a known number? I can't remember if that is that. Are we approved for that 150,000 for the Trillium grant? As far as I couldn't remember if we were already approved. So, okay, no, that's good. Thank you.
No other questions? Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Chief.
Next project calls for the replacement of the dehumidifier in the South Huron Rec Center in the arena portion. This piece of equipment is critical to our production and maintenance of ice. And currently we're down to about 20% of life left on the unit that we currently have. This unit has seen repairs made over the last couple of years. 3 years ago, it had a fire in it. And it was repaired and extended a little bit, but we're now down to 20% left of life in this. And if we do get into any type of warm weather, which we generally see at ice startup, we also have seen it in the December, January thaw, where this could potentially take our ice out.
Thank you. Any questions?
Also provides without the dehumidifier, we would have fog and stuff on the ice, which would not be able to be used at the time. So,
okay. Any questions, Councillor Vaughn?
Yes, I'm not sure if this is for Jeremy or who it's for as a question, but just wondering if this dehumidifier also is the same thing as the refrigeration. We have a debenture outstanding for a refrigeration item that we purchased in 2013. And I'm just wondering how this refrigeration debenture relates to dehumidifier.
so the refrigeration plant is the actual plant that makes the ice, which you said 2013 was that. I believe that was the expansion onto the back northeast corner when we put the new plant in. The dehumidifier is a piece of equipment all on its own, not part of the making of the ice. It's more of the maintaining the humidity in the building.
Okay. Okay, thanks. Just wanted to make sure they were different
Separate
things.
items, yes.
Great, thank you. Mr. Carlson, comment?
I was just gonna make a note of the South Huron Rec Center, the exterior steel lower replacement, as well as the upper painting has been included in the numbers as per council direction.
Okay. Thank you. Chief, when you're ready.
Which one are we?
With the
Sorry. So the steel lower replacement, so with the construction project, we completed the west and south side of the lower steel. It was heavily damaged with holes and stuff. So this calls for the replacement of the east and north sides to finish off the building. And then the next line is the upper painting. So the yellow color would be painted the blue to match the west and south sides.
Great. Thank you. Go ahead, Chief.
On the truck next. So the replacement of the 2008 Sierra pickup truck number 103. This truck was originally purchased by the building department, then transferred to the fire department, and then transferred to the recreation department. This vehicle is 15 years old and in extremely poor condition. There's not much left of the box sides. It's rotted quite substantially and definitely needs to be replaced. So in this one would be the replacement of using the 2019 Dodge from the building department.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Not seeing any. Thank you, Chief. Next one.
Next project, and I believe final project for this department, is the Hustler lawnmower replacement. This one, this is the Batwing mower that cuts grass 5 days a week. It's our primary unit for our playing fields due to its size, and replaced with a like zero turn lawnmower.
Thank you. Questions? You're not seeing any. Yeah, on to Dawn.
Okay, we're looking at transportation services.
Go ahead, Ms. Warwick.
I'll just highlight some changes that happened between the original. So the Corbett Line project has been added per council direction. It's been pulled into the 2024 draft. And then I also wanted to point out there is an error in the draft budget book where the icebreaker is on the scheduled, it's being paid from a reserve. But on the individual capital request form, it should have been identified as being paid from the winter reserve, but it wasn't. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Mr. Iverson or Mr. Timmermans, who'd like to do this?
Project 1 is the traffic signal upgrades at Main and Huron, which is typically what is happening here at Sanders, except it probably won't meet the needs for the street peds, the little push buttons, the silver sticks that are out there to meet AODA standards. So this would new control panel and controller to run the traffic signals.
Any questions for Mr. Timmermans? Okay. Thank you.
Project 2 is paving of McTaggart line from 83 to Rogerville.
Questions for Mr. Timmermans? Okay, next one. Dashwood Main Street.
Dashwood Main Street sidewalk replacement. That would be a project through Huron County while they're doing 83 through Dashwood.
Thank you, Councilor Oak.
Thank you. Just a question on that. There's been some talk that that project is being split between 2024 and 2025. I guess the question is this item something that's going to take place in 2024, or is it something that's going to be now a 2025 project?
Mr. Giberson.
Through you, Mayor Finch, we were just notified last Wednesday that the county was considering splitting the project. So this is really current news. What's driving this is there's considerably more municipal drain work required. So the project has expanded for the county. It's now approaching a $10 million project. So they're concerned about the the constructability in 1 year. There's another issue that had been kicking around, the festival hydro pole relocations. They had been unsure whether they could do all of the hydro poles in 1 year. So they were proposing relocate half the poles if we did the entire project, or if the county did the entire project, then some of those poles east of Center Street would be left in the asphalt parking lane and then moved back the following year. So there's a number of factors that are driving this, having the county consider, but the county's also told us they are not making a final decision until sometime in the new year. So at this point, it's we only know that they're considering splitting the project at Center Street. But we won't know the final outcome until we're into January, February. So that's why we're proceeding at this point on the information that we know, that propose the entire project for 2024. And then as we receive more information from the county, then we can come back to council with what that phasing looks like. So this is what's being put forward now is the best information we have at this time.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thanks very much, Don, for that. Mr. Timmermans? Oh, sorry, Councillor Vaughn.
Yeah, I keep doing this. Sorry. I'm just wondering if you can just humor me here for a minute here on this project. 2 projects ago, traffic signal upgrades. There's a grant, sizable, nice grant, 269,000. And I'm just wondering if this grant has a deadline, like most grants do.
Ms. Warwick, you want to take that?
Through you, Mayor Finch, the CCBF grant is the gas tax dollars that we have. So there, it's not.
Oh, it's not that kind of a grant.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Timmermans, number 4, I believe. Here in street replacement structure.
I think Corbett Line was first.
Was it? Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Okay.
Yeah, the extension pavement on Corbett Line.
Questions for Mr. Timmermans on that? Not seeing any. Okay, next one.
Placement of structure 3044 on Huron Street. That is closer to Hearn Line.
Questions? Okay, Councillor Oak.
Yeah, thank you. Just a question on the 700 and some thousand. I guess we've done some other bridges in that area in the last couple years, and I know on Park and on Elanville, and they've come in at $300,000 and $400,000, and so I'm just wondering why we think this one is going to be 700,000 when it's a smaller bridge than one of the ones for sure, that, or both of them probably. The other 2 were bridges and this is more of a culvert. So just wondering why this one is 700,000. Just to wonder about.
Mr. Timmermans.
Through you, Mayor Finch. Those 2 other projects were repairs. They weren't full replacements. This is a full replacement of the box culvert.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that. Any other questions? Okay, moving right along.
Line 17 structure replacement. This would be joint with Perth, sorry, West Perth.
Any questions? Councillor Vaughn.
Yeah, so the 369,000, that's our share.
That's correct, because they're the project lead.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, nothing further on that. Moving on.
Engineering for structure on B line for repairs.
Questions? Not seeing any. Oh, Councillor Oak.
Yeah, just a question on that. This is a project that isn't going to happen until 2026. I guess the question is, do we need to do the engineering in 2024? Or can that be deferred until 2025?
Mr. Giberson.
Through you, Mayor Finch. Yeah, this is a fairly typical question during budget. So in order to do the capital projects, the minimum is to do the engineering the year before. It is a best practice to do that engineering as far in advance as possible, but not get too far ahead of ourselves. Doing it 2 years in advance is what Huron County does. So it's a pretty good guide that's a best management practice to do that engineering. It also, this will come up later with some other street reconstructions that we're planning. This allows us to adequately deal with some of the surprises that come up, like our Victoria Street reconstruction project, where once we get into the project, we have a couple of challenges that's going to take some time. The hydro pole relocations on Victoria, Hydro One does not move that quickly. That project would be delayed by 6-8 months and doubtful whether we could have constructed it if we had gone in 2024. So doing it this far in advance, it seems like it's a little too far in advance, but it's a best management practice to get it done that far in advance.
Councillor Oak.
Yeah, no, and I respect that. I just thought that this is more of a smaller project and not a major street project, so it's a little bit different. And I'm just asking the question and respectful that there's only so much can be done. I know the county maybe does it 2 years out, but they've got a full arsenal of staff up there too, that there's only so much that can be accomplished in a year, and we don't want a whole bunch of carry forward projects that we ran into during the COVID times. And so, because staff can only handle so much, and so and projects down the road, the engineering is outsourced. I get that, but they also rely on you guys for answers and stuff. But then it's ultimately the projects, you can't have them all come up in 26 either. So because there's only so much that can be done. So I just thought that this was a smaller one, and that the lead time seemed to be a little excessive in my mind.
Mr. Giberson, comment?
Yeah, I thank you for that, because we do have limited resources. It is a challenge, but this is the attempt here is to try to plan at the best we can, get as much advanced planning done. It gives more confidence in in some of the budgeting when we've done the engineering, we've defined the work better. But there is another element here. I have 2 young managers that are just learning the business, and this is an attempt to try to do some of that knowledge transfer. So there's a few other things in the mix here to try to plan for these projects and walk through some of these things while people are still learning in their management role. And they're doing great, but this is another element to try to design some of these projects so we can just get ahead of things a little bit. But very mindful of the workload, because we have been overwhelmed in the past with taking on too much. So thank you.
Thank you. No further questions on that one. Okay, moving right along, Mr. Timmermans.
Replacement of pickup truck 117.
Any comments? It's been well discussed already. Okay, right, moving along. Oh, sorry, Mr. Oak, go ahead.
I might have missed this, or that the pickup truck now, maybe it was in Don's report that it's coming out of the transportation capital replacement reserve. Is that the thought? Because it's not in the sheets that way. I just, maybe I was, or maybe I'm asking whether it can. My notes are such because there is $5 million in that capital replacement reserve. Just wondering whether that would be something. I can't remember if it was in Don's report. Yeah, there was something here in Don's report saying there's sufficient funds in the transportation capital reserve to fund this, or could be funded through the tax levy. So the sheet says that it's coming out of the levy. Is it possible? I guess the question would be, could it come out of the transportation capital reserve and reduce our tax levy by 70,000 here?
Ms. Warwick.
Through you, Mayor Finch. In compiling this budget, we tried to keep as close to the guideline of using 25% of your previous year contributions. That being said, could this come out of the transportation capital reserve? At council's discretion, it could, yes. So right now it's not being budgeted to come from there. It's tax levy dollars, but it could be.
Great, thank you.
And the only reason I bring it up is it was in the report that is a suggestion that it could potentially come out of there. So I don't know. I'm recommending that it comes out of the reserve.
Okay, thank you for that. Any comments? Are you making sorry, Councillor Vaughn, you have a comment?
Yes, I'm just wondering if that's something that should be added to the to-do list of what we're asking the CAO and Julia, the finance group, to come back with. Is that another item to add to the list?
Turn to Mr. Sue Carlson, please.
Well, I think for this one, we do know what the reserves are at. So it could be a council recommendation at this point. If council does want to change this, you could do that right now.
Okay, so having heard that, we are within our percentage that we committed to on the reserve policy to be able to do that? Or are we going against that?
Through you, Mayor Finch, I don't believe the capital replacement reserves have the same recommended minimum balance in our policy as some of the other reserves that we've talked about tonight.
Okay.
Just going off of what we've had as past practice for budgeting use in a year, this would be over and above that 25%, but that has been done in the past as well at council's discretion.
Okay, well, in as much as it's a catch-up year, I think maybe that makes sense. So if we need a motion for that, I'm prepared to make that motion, or Ted can make that motion.
Okay, and I'll turn to Madam Clerk to prepare that. Ms. Sue Carlson.
While Alex is preparing that motion, we are getting closer to 7, which would be our 3 hours. Just a matter of what council wants to do after this, whether or not extend curfew or what. Maybe council could think about that after this resolution.
Thank you for that.
That the 2010 GMC pickup truck 117 replacement be paid from the Transportation Capital Reserve for the 2024 budget.
Councillor Vaughn, you're satisfied with that? Oh,
I am.
Thank you. Councillor Oak, seconded. Any discussion? Councillor Oak, go ahead.
I just, the reason I brought it up was that in light of, it's been 3 or 4 years since we have purchased any trucks or anything. There has been some buildup in that capital replacement reserve. So a one-off is not going to make or break. I don't think, so I think this is maybe the year that we need to look at that, so.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? We have a mover and a seconder. If there's no further discussion, call the question, all in favor. And that carries with 6 or 5, I believe. Get your hands up, please. You got them up? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Sue Carlson mentioned about going past curfew. Are we interested in going past curfew? Doesn't appear to be. Okay, so we'll take a few more then. Or deputy, go ahead.
How much more have we got? How much longer are we gonna be?
Depends how much we talk.
Well, I guess that depends on how long I stay there.
Yeah, there you go.
I'd like to make that motion that we extend. I think we have to have unanimous, so I'll make that motion
Okay,
that we extend up to an hour.
okay, so moved. Is there a seconder for that? Okay, that doesn't look like it. Or did you second it, Counselor? Okay. Counselor McLeod Haggett, any discussion on that? Call the question, all in favor to extend past the 3 hours? 1, okay. Thank you very much. That fails. Okay, let's just moving on. Mr. Timmermans.
Replacement of John Deere mower, roadside mower.
Any discussion on that? Counselor Oak?
Yeah, I guess so this is replacing of a mower that we already have. What's happening to the other mower that is in place right at the moment with this purchase?
Mr. Timmermans?
Sorry, we've got 2 mowers. So they rotate through and then we use both all year or like all cutting season. So this one here would be surplus.
So this is a third mower that we're having?
No, this one here would be surplus and then purchasing a new one.
Okay, and so we have 2 currently.
Correct.
But we have 1 tractor.
Correct.
So, okay, I'm just trying to figure out why we have 2 to begin with right now then.
So for roadside cutting, we need the second tractor. So I rent a tractor for a month to help out with the roadside cutting when it comes back to cutting back to the ditch. And then that's when we use that. Or if one needs repairs or breaks down while doing the first cut, then we switch it out quickly and try and keep things moving.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. Next item, please. Number 9.
Replacement of backhoe 118.
Any questions? Mr. Oak, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess just like a little bit more explanation on the use of a mini excavator versus the backhoe. I know there's times where we use the backhoe for at the cemetery and other purposes, and would this excavator be able to be used for the same type of jobs? And then, do we already have a trailer that could be used or for this purpose?
Mr. Timmons?
So the backhoe, when you said cemetery, we haven't been in the cemetery to do work in there since I've been here, and I think it's been previous. It's been quite a while. The price in here also does include a float, so a heavier float to transport it back and forth from job to job. Using a Mini X is more versatile while doing ditch work, culvert replacements. It's very hard with the backhoe because your legs got to go down, and when you're ditching, you can only do about 1 bucket width, and then you have to move. So it's very impractical use of time with a backhoe, doing a lot of roadside ditching and a lot of work. Backhoe has its purpose, but there's a lot more versatile work in the ditch side with a Mini X. And we still do have one other backhoe. So currently right now we have two backhoes. So we still have that versatile of the other backhoe also.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, Deputy?
If, I guess my question is this hole big enough to put a brusher on it? Thank you.
Yes, this one is. It still do a good chunk. The big, larger stuff would still need to be contracted out, but a lot of the small, brushy stuff this machine would be capable of doing that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, not seeing any. Thank you. Next one, please.
Number 10, the icebreaker.
Any questions? Councillor Dietrich.
It looks like it has a lot of moving parts to it. Would it not be quite expensive to keep that operating compared to having the blade on a grader?
So in that photo there, it's just a drum with spikes on it. So really there's actually only a few bearings and then those pieces along the drum itself. So there's a lot less moving pieces on this than a grader. Also ice blading with a grader is very, very hard on the grader itself. It's something that conventionally has been done for years and years and years. But it does do a lot of wear and tear on the moldboard, on the circle, on the grader itself, tires, so on and so forth. This year the drum doesn't drive. It only drives when you move in motion. So you're just pushing it along. To transfer from one area to another area to get the snow-packed areas or ice, you can move faster than what a grader can. Also, you can do a fairly decent speed with this. There's a lot less effort of trying to do that job also. So with a grader, you're trying to really claw your way into the gravel. This piece of equipment just sits on top and you push it. So there would also be a pretty good cost savings in fuel just alone.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Deputy.
Thank you. Does this need a separate truck from the blade? And how big would that truck have to be? Thank you.
This would be able to fit right on our tandem plows. So you would just take the one way off and put this on, and then it just hooks up with the hydraulic cylinder and lifts it just like it does with the one-way plow. So within 10 minutes, even less probably, you could have the one way off and this device put on.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Oak.
And just for clarification, I think this was the sheet said the levy, but it's coming out of the winter control reserve.
Ms. Warwick.
To Mayor Finch, yes, that's correct.
At this time, because it's about 10:02, I was wondering, as we're going to need another budget meeting, if there would be a resolution to set the next budget meeting for December 11th at 4 p.m.
Okay, so we need a mover for that. Moved by Councillor Oak, seconded by Councillor Vaughn. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? That carries with 7. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Carlson.
And the other comment I would have is, does council have any indication of your goal for the tax rate? As when we bring back our analysis, it will assist if we know what parameters what you're looking for. I think that might be helpful, even if it's a range.
Any comments from members of council? Councillor Vaughn.
Oh, I'll step out there. Yeah, so of course, we have two different tax rates. We've got the urban and the rural, but I always like to see something around 2.5% to 3%. But I know everybody else is gonna have a different opinion, so.
Thank you. Anyone else? Deputy, you have a comment?
I do and I don't like it, but I don't think that's gonna do us with what we're trying to do here. We're trying to put money in the reserves for fire. There's so much happening here. We've got a whole bunch of pickup trucks to buy. I don't know how we're gonna do it. And I understand, I like your idea of the 2.5% to 3%, but I really personally can't see how we're gonna do it. So I guess I'm gonna leave it mostly to staff and let them try and bring back as low as they can go and see where we go with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Oak.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I'm thinking in the 3% range because I just know what, inflation rate is right at the moment. And I think the last few years we've been skirting on being on the low side. And I do know that there are some things that are being looked at that are going to come back as far as investment income utilization to bring that number down. If we were able to bring down or put a couple 100,000 of investment income towards the project or the OPP contract, dropping 250,000 on there might get us down to where we need to go with a few other minor adjustments. We might get down to that 3%. Because if memory serves me, about 100,000-ish is 1% of the levy. If that is that, I haven't asked publicly if that's the number, but I think that's roughly the number. Maybe Julia could let us know.
Julia, could you?
Through you, Mayor Finch. Yeah, so just over $100,000 is approximately 1%. I will say just the change tonight of the 70,000 for that truck coming out of the transportation capital reserve. So it was fully funded from the tax levy before. That would put us at an estimated 5.8% tax rate increase for rural and 3.69% for urban, just as where we're at kind of after this meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or suggestions from members of council? Not seeing any. Ms. Sue Carlson, any other comments? What's your thoughts?
Well, we've got 9 minutes left. Yes, next is combined, or shall we just end there and start at the combined at the next meeting? Might make the most sense.
Let's do the next meeting, I think. Miss Councillor Vaughan, go ahead.
Actually, I did want to ask one question about the Main Street reconstruction. Because I know we're going to be moving into another budget meeting and I'm not exactly sure when we will be presenting the whole budget for approval. But this one has a $3 million Connecting Link grant attached to it that actually I think I read somewhere in here that the grant deadline is for absolute completion is March 31st, 2025. So that's this is a big project and that's not a lot of time. And so my question was really around should we be discussing this project? Is there a logical reason to approve this one ahead of the rest of the budget? I don't like really doing that, but I know that there's a lot of process, with the RFP and getting that ready and so on and so forth. And I guess I'm looking to Mr. Giverson for some direction on that.
Mr. Giverson?
That's a wonderful idea. We are very close to being tender ready. We have a meeting, through you, Mayor Finch. We have almost a wrap up design meeting with the consultant by the end of this week. So we're in a position to be tender ready very soon. This is critical. We've got a lot of work to do in 2024. So the sooner it goes out to tender, the better off we'll be. We have a distinct advantage there hasn't been much discussion in open council about, we now have, after about 2 years of work, the MOE has now issued our consolidated ECAs. So which means the water or the sewer approvals, the sanitary sewer and storm approvals are now a part of that CLI approval. So we can advance the schedule considerably because we no longer have to apply for an ECA that can take many months for approval. So we're very close to being able to release this tender. I would say we're within a few weeks, and to have early adoption of this is a huge advantage. And the budget was already approved for the road portion of this with an amendment last year.
Thank you, Councillor Oak.
Yeah, thank you. Just a question. There's been some talk about oversizing of the infrastructure at the north end on this project. And I shudder to use that word oversizing again. But it's there's talk about doing that, and will that affect this tender? And so we as council have to decide about that as well. I know just I guess whether we'd be on the hook as a council for the oversizing, or if it would all be developer funded for that oversizing.
Mr. Kyverson.
Your question is very timely because a letter was just submitted today from that developer, which will be on the agenda for the council meeting on the December 4th. That will not delay the tendering of this project. The oversizing that they have requested is from Thames Road to Walper Street. So it's a fairly short section, and it's one pipe size larger for the water main, basically going from 8-inch to a 10-inch. The sanitary sewer is also one pipe size increase, going from a 200 millimeter to a 300 millimeter. So it's not substantial oversizing. And the request to council is to do this under our connecting link agreement. They are funding 100% of the costs upfront. No cost, no risk to the municipality is the proposal, so that this can go in the ground in advance of their project, but it avoids cutting up, excavating through a new road. And for the developer, they end up saving having to replace something that we would have put in with something larger, and they save on the road restoration work. So that will be coming to council as a request at the next council meeting. That would then have to form, if council wishes to proceed with that, then that would go for the next step would be direct staff to put together an agreement. So all the terms and conditions are spelled out, and the project, it could be tendered without. This is not a significant change to the project, but if there's time and we did have council approval, then we would include it with the tender. So either way it goes, it's not a significant change. It's basically as risk-free oversizing. Well, it is a totally risk-free oversizing with really no impact on the project.
So we have 2 minutes left before we have to be done. So does anyone make a recommendation to proceed then? Councillor Vaughn?
Yeah, so I'm just having heard about the oversizing, because I was going to ask about that too. And it's great to hear that a report's coming on Monday next week, so 1 week from now, which is great too. Should we be approving this budget item tonight, or can we do both of those items on Monday?
Mr. Sue Carlson?
I think we'd be okay to do the item on Monday or on the 18th likely, which was when the original budget would have been approved anyway, if we stayed on schedule.
Okay.
Don, do you have any other comments
Yeah,
to that, or?
certainly if You, Mayor Finch, cognizant of the time,
Thank you very
that
much.
is a correct that we can wait to the 18th for, but to get early adoption of this would really help the project. What's coming to council is a letter from the developer.
Right.
That's just a hint.
Great, thank you. So we'll move to adjournment now. Mr. Sue Carlson?
The South Huron Council hereby adjourn at 6:59 PM to meet again on December 4th, 2023 at 6 PM or at the call of the chair.
Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilor Neve. No discussion. Call a question. All in favor? That carries with